Today I'm talking about whether you should grade your cards or not. I've sent in a bunch of my baseball cards several times, some through GameStop, some through PSA directly, and I belong to a lot of forums, and I see this question asked all the time. So I wanted to organize some of my thoughts on things to consider and at least what I believe as when you should grade your cards versus not grading them. So first, let me start with some of the benefits of grading cards. The first one is authentication. If you're an avid collector, especially of high-end cards, there's a lot of fakes. The Michael Jordan rookie is known to have a lot of fakes, as well as other sort of high-end and high collectible cards. So the first benefit of authentication is that you're confirming, or the benefit of grading is that you're confirming that the card is in fact what you think it is, with all the fakes in the market. And that does help with the marketability of the card, should you want to sell it at some point. The second benefit is increase in value. So if you look at the rates, what's considered ungraded or raw is generally a fraction of what some of the graded cards are, especially those that are highly graded as eights, nines, or tens. And so again, if you're doing this for value and for resell, grading does increase the value pretty significantly of the cards. The third one is protection. So if you're not really worried about selling or value just yet, maybe you want to protect the cards, and having them in the slabs protects them. And then there's usually sleeves that people put around the slabs. So that's the third benefit of getting them graded. The fourth one is marketability. So if you do want to sell, graded cards are highly sought after and therefore more marketable, as well as easier to sell if you're planning on selling them, because it comes with that first point around authentication, that it is legitimately the card, and that it has, the relative value of the scoring, which gets to the first point, the last point, which is consistency of scoring, of quality. And I say sort of, because the idea makes a ton of sense that a six is a six and an eight is an eight and a gem mint is a 10. And regardless of the card, it's a consistent scoring. The challenge and a lot of the feedback that you see online is that some of the companies are not really viewed as consistently scoring, either between companies. So some people think PSA grades much tougher than, let's say, Beckett, or within the company. So I see a lot of videos of people who will get a card graded as a 2 from PSA. They'll break it open, send it back, and then get a 4 or a 5. And so I know these companies have to work on the consistency, but conceptually, the idea is the number is the same number across the board. From a con perspective, why would you not want to do it? The first one is cost. With the amount of demand of cards, the cost of grading is now $20, $25 a card, maybe close to 30 for PSA. And so, if you have hundreds of cards or dozens of cards that you want to send in, it just becomes a significant investment, let alone the shipping fees. And then sometimes the cards will also, the grading companies will charge you an insurance premium if the cards are really valuable. So now all of a sudden your cost keeps going up. Second one is turnaround time. While PSA says that they're working on it, the last submission I sent in took about 3 months to get back. And so that's a long time waiting. And a lot of times it'll sit in a status for just weeks or months, and you don't know if it's actually being worked on or if it's just sitting in a corner somewhere. And so they are pretty long turnaround times. Third is the risk of a low grade. So if you're worried about value and you want to send it in, and then all of a sudden your card comes back a 2 or a 3, which in some cases is less valuable than if it wasn't graded, let alone all the cost you just spent, you may not think that it's worth it. The fourth one, right, is that it may not be worth it if you're going to send, let's say you have a $20 card, a card that's considered raw of 20, and you want to get it graded with a $20 cost. So it should be worth at least 40 just to break even on it. And a lot of times it just doesn't. So my first submission, I sent in probably about 10 cards, which came back as less valuable than the amount I spent on the grading. And I'll talk about why I did that actually in the next view there. And then the fifth one is that subjectivity of some of the scoring. As I mentioned, there's lots of examples where a grade will come back as one number, and and you think it's an 8, and it comes back as a 4. So those are sort of the pros and cons to think about. Here's my take on this. I would say grade the cards if they're key rookies or rare cards, maybe the ones that have limited editions or parallels or refractors, and certainly vintage. I would grade. If you look at it and think it could be a 9 or a 10, I'd send it in. But I say be careful because I also see dozens and dozens of postings where people will post something and say, I don't know why this came back as a 6. And then you look closely and the corners are bent and there's a line down the middle and there's a dot on the page. And so, most of us are not experts in grading cards. So a lot of times, especially when you're first sending them in, you think, hey, I pulled it from a pack, it should be a 10. But they look at all sorts of things such as centering and if there's blemishes on the cards and the corners and how well it's cut. So, I would be careful. But if you think that the card is legitimately a high-end one, it's probably worth sending it in. The third one, which is why I do it, is if you just want to protect them and you enjoy collecting and handling the cards and you want to look at them, yeah, I personally think having them slabbed is great. They look great. I like slabbing them all through PSA and so on, which gets to my next point is I have a bunch of specialized collections. So for example, I'm collecting every Aaron Judge Topps base card as a PSA 10, going back to his rookie year. Or I have every one of Nolan Ryan's cards graded so that I have, all of his cards from 19, I think 67, 68 through 94. The last piece I'll say is consider the grading company. So there are perceived differences. PSA is perceived as having higher value. There's some definitely like cheap ones out there that you've never heard of before, so I'd be cautious of those. But just do your research into the grading companies. When not to grade, certainly with the junk wax era, everybody thinks, wow, I got a Barry Bonds rookie, I'll pay off my house and be a millionaire, and that just didn't happen because they produced so many of them. And so those fall into the category where they're probably not worth the grading cost. Again, unless you want to collect them and have them preserved and so on. I wouldn't grade it if the grading fees outweigh the value that you'll get back from the card. And again, as they increase from $20, $30 a grade, that sort of puts a lot of cards out of that realm. If the card's in really crappy shape, I don't know that I'd send it in, unless classic vintage. I mean, a Mickey Mantle PSA 1 still sells for hundreds of dollars, and so classic vintage is still considered pretty good investment in getting graded. And the last one is if you don't want to wait, you don't want to wait the 3 months to get them back. I'd say don't grade them. So those are some thoughts that I have on grading versus not grading, when to do it or not. Just my take. I put together some of my information, but I'm definitely curious about what others think. So post in here on the comments. Let me know what you think. If I missed anything, if you have other perspectives. But thanks for watching.